Hi, friends. I am just returning from an incredible time at South by Southwest. We held a care sanctuary. We went out on the streets and visited with people and asked questions about dementia and caregiving. And we also got to witness the Lorenzo's House short film screening and participate in a panel answering questions about dementia and storytelling and caregiving and providing support and meeting a lot of you. The Care Sanctuary was a time when family caregivers could come in and people in the Austin community that work in aging and support caregivers, and that one-on-one time, being able to meet people in person was quite something. You'll have to follow our social media. I was there with Dementia Darling, Carrie Albers, Miss Patty Cake, Patty LaFleur, James Lee, Senior Living Guy, and Kyle Rand with Rendeavor. And Kyle was also an official South by Southwest speaker talking all about VR. You will have to look up details about Rendeavor and learn more. They are doing quite incredible work in the family caregiving and dementia space. During my time at the Care Sanctuary, I sat with a family caregiver and we were looking at Zinnia. Zinnia TV is a therapeutic dementia care platform, and they have engaging, friendly video content that reduces anxiety, sparks conversation. I was able to go through all of the different kinds of videos and topics. And really what struck me this time as I was sitting with the family caregiver was the different videos on supporting caregivers. So as a caregiver, I am able to learn about different things to support me in my care. And I love the extension of that. Not only can your loved one absorb and participate in Zinnia, but you can also learn as well. It's a great tool for respite while you're making dinner and all of the things that you need to accomplish in your day to have that be available as a tool. We invite you to use the code GATHER20 for 20% off an annual subscription, and the link will be in the bio. I didn't even recognize myself as a caregiver. It was just what I did for my family. Does that sound familiar? Caregiving sneaks up on you, and before you know it, you're juggling doctor's appointments, medications, daily care, and you're still managing your own life. That's why HeroGeneration exists. They provide expert guidance, real solutions, and a community that gets it. The founders have been in your shoes, and so you are never alone in this journey. Visit herogen.co to get the support that you deserve. It is free to start, and today is an exciting episode as we get to talk with the founders of HeroGeneration and hear their story of care and why it was really important for them to solve a lot of the same challenges that we experience, and what happens when we are all of a sudden thrust into this role. The people that have raised us, have cared for us, now we are caring for them, and it doesn't arrive as sudden as we think, right? There's different things that start to gradually take over our day as a caregiver, and we are talking about how to balance this. Nicole and Shruti are two caregivers and people that have seen the challenges in caregiving, and they are turning that same energy and that same passion and realizing how broken and unsupported our systems are for family caregivers. And they are creating a roadmap and a care tool that will support us in our care, and sharing their personal story, the challenges that they see and that they've experienced, and solutions for navigating the caregiving journey. You do not want to miss this episode. Here is my interview with Nicole àBeckett and Dr. Shruti Roy. Welcome, ladies. This is going to be such a great conversation. You guys have so much knowledge and wisdom, and I'm so excited to learn from you along with everyone else. So thank you for being here.
Yes,
Great.
thank you so much for having us, Nicole. We're excited for this.
I want to start with your personal stories. Before you were founders, you were caregivers, are caregivers, and I would love to hear how caregiving has changed your life. And was there a moment when you realized, oh my gosh, here we are, we're caregivers?
I'll start. Yeah. So I don't think there was a moment, right? It's in retrospect, I can now look back on it, but when you're in it, I don't know that you realize I didn't realize it. So my caregiving journey really started in 2015 when my father was coming to the end of his 15-year battle with cancer. And my mother was his primary caregiver. However, she has long suffered from a lung disease. And so I was really stepping in and supporting her during that time. But, I don't think I knew the term caregiver then, to be honest. I was, my early 30s. I was about to have my first child. I was just trying to survive and, take in all the information and do the best I could to support my mom. We knew what the outcome was going to be. And so I come from a background in tech. I have a 20-year career in startups, primarily building companies, tech companies. So I was really looking for a platform to help me with all that, but didn't find anything. And, you just kind of are taking in all the information. What's palliative care versus hospice care? The medications my dad was increasingly on to make him more comfortable. What is all this? What does it mean was we're increasing the dosage? I remember my dad got really high off of I don't know if it was like fentanyl. It was like my first introduction of fentanyl. Anyway, so it was just, as you can imagine, so much going on. I didn't have time to stop and understand that I was a caregiver then. My dad passed so in 2015, and fast forward in about 2018, my mom's lung disease really took a turn. And while she was still really able to, support herself on her own, I had to step up and help a lot with doctor's appointments and medications and just really kind of helping a lot more everyday life and, keeping the house running and everything. And so I think that's when I started to realize, like, oh, wow, this is much more of a job rather than a situation I was just thrown into. And I had my second child by then. And, I think it started to dawn on me that this is a much more long-term process in supporting my mother as a caregiver than the situation with my father. And so my mom passed in 2021. She, suffered complications from interstitial lung disease. And so it wasn't until after then that I was really able to reflect back on, whoa, that was an intense, intense experience. I had two children during that time period. I often say I felt like I was in a washing machine, tumbling, 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 tumbling. And when my mom passed and, I got through it, I was let out and just like was able to reflect back on what that caregiving experience really was for me in that journey. And so that's my story, Nicole, and Shruti's in it right now. And her story is, different, obviously, from mine, as all of ours are.
Oh, we have our
Yeah.
story and then they connect. So I'd love to hear from you. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So I became a caregiver last year. So in the beginning of 2024, my dad had just spent 2 months abroad and he came home and I was like, wow, it was almost like seeing a different man in front of me. So it felt very sudden. He had become slower. He had tremors. He was having trouble using his dominant hand. Even getting up from the first dinner that we had together, I was like, wow, what is going on? And, it took about a month and a half for us to kind of get to a diagnosis. It was a difficult process, and we wanted to rule out everything else just because I knew about Parkinson's, but I didn't really think Parkinson's could happen this fast, this sudden, this progressive. And so we finally got the diagnosis that it was, in fact, Parkinson's disease. And then, I thought, my mom's here, she's with him, she's going to be his primary caregiver. I'll be there to help because I'm only 3 blocks away. But then 5 weeks later, my mom broke her hip and had to be hospitalized and had hip surgery. So then all of a sudden, I became the caregiver for both of them. And it was very difficult. I'd say I came to terms with me having to have that new caregiver aspect of my life when she was about to be discharged. And I realized, whoa, this is on me. I am now the caregiver. And just managing her with my dad, I'd say was probably one of the most difficult times. The hardest part about it was that, I just turned 40. I felt like I was in a stable part of my life. My kids were getting older, more self-sufficient. My career was going well. My husband's career was going well. We were settled. And then boom, this happened and everything kind of flipped over.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so much. I know. And as your background, even as a doctor, right, and trained to care for others, and then you become a caregiver. And so, did you find for you, did any of the medical knowledge make it easier, or was it still like, what is happening? What's going on?
Honestly, I think it made it a little worse
Mm.
because I knew the statistics and the complications around Parkinson's disease and around especially hip fractures. Because I knew that, once you have a hip fracture, it leads to so many other complications. And so I think personally, the medical knowledge made it more stressful for me. I only went to the worst case scenarios in my head. And I mean, there were pros. I had resources. I knew of other physicians that I can speak to. We have friends and colleagues that are orthopedic surgeons or neurologists. But for me personally, it was very hard for me to come to terms with their diagnoses and really grieve because I felt like I'm a physician. I need to make sure I do everything correct. I need to make sure I give them the best care possible. Any treatment options that there are, I need to research and really push for them instead of spending that time with my parents and grieving this new life. I just had so much more pressure on myself because I was a physician.
Yeah, I can see that. What did you both notice when you were navigating the healthcare system that you felt was missing that made caregiving even harder? Did you have any moments where you really wish there was something different?
I'll say in my situation, the healthcare system, I feel like we were so blessed, particularly with my dad, because like I said, when he was first diagnosed 15 years earlier, they gave him like 6 months, right? And it lasted 15 years. So in terms of like healthcare, I feel we were blessed. It was in those in that final stage where everything just happened so fast that I didn't even have a moment to catch my breath. I didn't know anything about this, right? Obviously, this is the first time I was going through this end stage of life with a loved one. And so I remember my dad, decided to stop all treatment. So they came and they're like, okay, we're going to put you into palliative care. But there's also hospice care and there's this. And like, my dad was still, healthy to look at and what's the difference? What's happening? What's going to happen? And I just didn't have the outlet to ask their questions or to whom to ask the questions to. And, the people that came to our house, they left the pamphlets and then they left. And then it was like, what is going to happen now? And you just kind of have, like, I felt at the time, I just had to like go through it. Again, I was 32. I was relatively young for this. And there wasn't like, I didn't know anybody else going through it at all. So, just not having that outlet to feel comfortable to ask the questions, like, of course, could have gone on Google and that didn't feel right and appropriate at the time, and so it was really just our family just kind of dealing with it every single day. Now with my mom, it was a much more, longer process, and we had a lot of support from, her healthcare team, which was in depth, and I was actually in shock as to how much, healthcare support she got, but the caregiving support, there was nothing. There was nothing, 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 right? Like, I mean, I'm reflecting on it now. There really was, hey, Nicole, because I was the one going to all her doctor's appointments, right? Her pulmonologist would see me every time, her nurses. Never once did they pull me aside and say, like, hey, this is tough. Here are some resources for you. Like I'm really like reflecting on that now, and just it's pretty shocking. I have a big family. People were wanting to help. So many, I have a brother. He lives in a different city, but he wanted to help. I didn't know what to do with them. I didn't know how to bring them in. I didn't know how to bring in that help. And there was no guideline on like, here's what you should do. I was never even handed like here's a caregiver, what caregivers can do, or here's some support. So I think the healthcare that my parents got was phenomenal. The caregiver support was zero. So, and I'm not saying it wasn't there. It was not made aware to me whatsoever.
I completely second that. That's the same experience I had. They had great health care. When my mom was being discharged, I remember walking into her hospital room and the nurse was like, "Oh, your mom's going home today." And I'm like, "Whoa, I don't have her shower bench. I don't have her wheelchair. I don't have, any of the equipment I needed, the resources I needed, nothing." And I had to ask for the, discharge planner to figure out how I'm going to get all this equipment and stuff for her. So I agree. I mean, the health care was great, but I felt so lost and I am surprised actually. I think that's definitely a place where being a physician, I think, is something definitely that hospitals could work on is more caregiver awareness and helping them with all these tasks to prepare for discharge.
Right. I know I'm brainstorming, but social workers really help with the patient side of getting things in order and placement, but there almost needs to be like a caregiver liaison, right?
Yeah, I
That can like
agree.
partner and have those conversations, set people up for success. Because
Mhm.
I imagine that the readmittance rate would be much lower with those
Absolutely.
systems.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing, Shruti and I really talk about as we've, created a solution. It's, this isn't just to support caregivers, but this is like overall healthcare. This is part of healthcare, right? And so we know the statistics on mental health for caregivers and their health outcomes, right? So it's not only just for the caregivers, but also the loved ones they're caring for, being able to make them stronger. And, so I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but
Oh,
it's just
yeah.
still shocking that like, it's funny because I've never really looked back on that until this moment
Yeah.
about not just my mom was in and out of the hospital a few times as well. And we had like a social worker when she was discharged, and it was like, here's some nutrition tips and, and here's some stuff. And is she, are you prepared to take her home? Like, yes, yes, yes. But I'm thinking back to like all the years of pulmonology appointments that I went to before it was like she was hospitalized. And like, it's so necessary to start that early, and start there. And it just never, like, that's such a strong area for intervention, I would say. And yeah, it's just kind of dawning on me now that that was not in any way, shape, or form like a service provided.
Well, hopefully with more conversations, right? Like this, that we can start to hopefully change that, shift that. And caregivers, as you were mentioning, you feel like you do have to figure it out all on your own. And then it becomes a lot, right? Too much. And you might not realize it till it's like maybe already happened. Did you have a breaking point moment where you're like, something needs to change, not just for yourselves, but for caregivers everywhere that really was like, we've got to do something about this?
Yeah. And again, yes, it wasn't until after my mom had passed that I really could take a minute to think about that, and because again, and like, Shruti is in it right now too. When you're in it, you're in it. Like you don't have
Mhm.
time to think about it because you still have your family or your career or your, other responsibilities. You don't have time to think about all of that. I think for me, having a background in, tech and startups, and it was something when I was like looking for these resources during my journey and not finding them, thinking like, oh, there really should be something, and just not finding something that was like specific to what I needed. It took me like a couple years afterwards to really see the bigger picture of what, resources could be to support caregivers. And so, yeah, I know Shruti, like
Yeah.
she's in the middle of it. So I grabbed her. I told her about it. I'm like,
My breaking point was that day that my mom got discharged. I wanted to show that I was strong in front of my parents, and I didn't want them to worry. But I remember going into the bathroom and having a meltdown. I just sat there and I cried in the hospital bathroom, cried and cried. And then, I brought her home and her and my dad moved in with me so that I could take care of them in the immediate post-op period. It was a few weeks later that I reflected on it. And that's when I had posted on Instagram about that journey. And that was the post that actually connected me with Nicole through a mutual friend because our mutual friend saw that post and connected us. And I was like, yes, we need to do this. I don't want anyone else to have to go through what we've gone through without these resources.
I'm so happy the universe works that way, right? That you find people that you need in those moments. You both
absolutely.
connected in that way. You share about how the data is on caregiving is really staggering, right? 53 million unpaid caregivers, 30 billion in lost productivity. I think people are always like, did you mean to say million? No, billion.
Mhm.
57 reporting depression. We are juggling everything from family, work, finances, medical decisions. There's the reality of all of this. I think we don't notice that till we're in it. What would you say for caregivers who feel like they're on the verge of really not being able to do this? Having a good cry in a restroom, which we've all been there. Yeah.
So, wow. The number one advice I'd give to someone who's going through it is really to find someone, whether that's a friend, a partner, a therapist, someone to talk to a ongoing basis about each thing. I think it's so important not to hold it in and isolate yourself, which is very easy to do. I feel as if all caregivers are in that position in the beginning, but really now talking about it, working on it, being honest and open about just how hard it is so important. They're taking that isolation and or that guilt and really sitting in it and either write it down, talk to somebody, find a way to let it out and come up with positive things you can do with that energy instead. I think it's so important. It's so hard to do, but really finding someone to talk to, such as that's why it's such a big part of our platform because I think that's the number one key of talking about caregiving in your journey to really make the moves to make it a more positive experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would just add to that the next, step in that also in talking to somebody is then like bringing in somebody to help you or your family, your friends to help in any capacity, whether it's, I'll never forget my aunt would just go and sit with my mom. She would like when my mom was still, not in her very, very end stage, but she would go there and just talk with her, and for me, knowing somebody was there, somebody was my mom had, wasn't alone, that was just relief beyond for me. And it was part of my talking to my aunt about like, I don't, know what to do. I don't want to leave my mom. I feel guilty. And she's like, I'll just go sit with her. And then especially at the end, when my mom wasn't really communicating anymore, my aunt would just like, I'll just go read a book and I'll just be there. And that to me was just the biggest thing. And I communicated it to my aunt. And like I said, I was so lucky. I have a big family. A lot of the times I didn't know how to ask them for help. They wanted to help. I didn't know. But, looking back on it, there were so many little things that I could have offloaded to them. And so I think, don't be afraid, like Shruti said, to talk to somebody, because then that will spark like maybe how others can help in their own capacity.
Yeah, and overwhelm is so much, but having someone just be there, right? Offering that sense of relief. I think we underestimate how powerful just being present is and sitting there and being a listening ear, being supportive. Yeah.
100%. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And Nicole, I'm going through it right now and having Nicole every day to speak to, like I have cried to her. I have told her about my dad. I have told her about my mom, about all the tasks I have and how I should get people involved to help. And it's been so nice to connect with Nicole and be able to have her support through this. It's so important.
Yes, so you feel like you're not alone. That's part of it, right? Of just like we all need people. We're made for human connection. We are. There's not just the medical side of caregiving. A lot of us experience those family dynamics. How has that shown up for you guys? Any challenges, and what advice would you give us as caregivers, right? There's different opinions, siblings, tension, all of it.
Yeah, I mean, look, caregiving is always a stressful thing. It's stressful, right? Because you're doing things, your loved one is probably in a place where they can't take care of it. It is stressful. So that always will add in a dynamic with your family, on top of whatever was already there to begin with. And so what I went through, like I have a big family, a big extended family. It was just taking in the positive help where you could, just recognizing like there's gonna be stressful times. And the more that you can be prepared for that and find ways to navigate that stress, do things for yourself. For me, I mean, that's, kind of how I got through it. And it was just dealing with, really for me, it was losing of my loved ones, but being able to bring in the team, the friends, the family to be part of the support network and everyone having a positive role in it just made you feel more of like a team working together, made me feel like a team working together. And that's the stress and complexity is going to be there. I don't know if we know how to like
I'll
fully
never
avoid
take that
it,
away. I know.
Shruti, I don't know if you have any other better advice, but
Yeah. Well, not so much advice, but well, maybe in the beginning when my parents had all this stuff going on, I isolated myself, as I mentioned, and it was very hard for me to have real conversations about just how stressed I was. Anytime I tried speaking about it, I would just melt down. I had 100 tasks to do, and I didn't know how to ask my siblings for help. They are all in different states, right? And I'm only 3 blocks away from my parents. So it just felt like it's on me. I should just do it and go on every day just figuring everything out by myself. My siblings really did want to help. They all have young kids, they all have careers, and they're all out of state. So it was very hard for me to figure out how to get them involved. And it took a few weeks to a few months even for me to send them an email and a Google Doc of like a list of tasks that they can do from afar. But the minute I did that, they felt empowered, I felt empowered, and we were really able to work on that together. So I think that really helped when I finally figured out a way to do that. And then the other thing was the boundary setting. So for my parents, and especially my dad, who likes to delegate everything to me, I sat down with him and I was like, hey, listen, there's some of these things that my sister can do or my brother can do. They can make certain phone calls. They can order you things from Amazon. I'm here and physically I'm the closest to you and I can do those tasks. But maybe these other tasks you can, call them and have them be more involved. So I think having those honest conversations and figuring out a mechanism was super helpful. And the task management part was the biggest. So now I've been able to bring them in, really assign them the tasks, and that's just been such a game changer for me.
Oh my gosh, huge, huge. And you answered my next question, right? Like when we feel like, what do we do when it is all us having to feel like we have to take care of everything, that there is a better way to handle that. And we're going to get into that soon about how you guys do that and offer people hope and support in that way. I think a lot of times people will say the term, like, let me know what I can do. And for a caregiver, as we know their heart's in the right place, that they mean well, it's hard when it's really vague.
yeah.
What advice do you have when people say that, or as a caregiver, if we're, feel bad or we're afraid to ask for help because we know everyone's busy?
Yes, exactly. I always likened it to like caregiving is like death by a thousand cuts because it's like obviously there's the doctor's appointments and that, but then there's the, like Shruti said, getting the shower bar, fitted and installed, getting, my mom, having her air conditioning filter changed, all the things that like, it's just like daily life that you don't think about that then, fall onto you as the caregiver. That never ending to-do list just piles up, 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 and up. And it feels, again, overwhelming. And those are things that can be so easily offloaded to your friends and family. And so that's why we created the to-do list that you can easily share, because a lot of the times it was like, my brother would call me like, hey, do you need me to do anything? And I'd be like, I'm driving right now. Like, let me think about it. And then, get home and have to do stuff and forget. And like, oh, he could probably order that. You know what? It's easier. I'll just do it. I'll just order it off Amazon. Or I'll just do, I'll just like call the, guy to come install that thing for mom. It just becomes easier, quote unquote, for you to do it, because it's, you got to then text him what it is that needs to be purchased and how it needs to be installed and like all the things, right? Having a place to write down the to-do list and easily let your friends and family know that they can just grab those things or do those things, just really makes, I think, life a lot easier for caregivers. Don't let the to-do list pile up on top of you, because then the other statistics, caregivers are spending over $7,000 out of pocket, right? Because all those things add up as well. So you can spread not just the time and tasks, you can spread the costs, the additional costs of some of those things to other friends and family. So, as much as you can, I guess, make that list and share it in advance or share it, eventually I think that's just makes life so much easier. And it goes in with what I think we said earlier about bringing in a team and somebody that's there to help you and be part of your team to support the caregiving.
It helps with that connection, community, bringing the family in, the burnout,
Yes.
overwhelm, loneliness, right? All of it. I really want everyone to hear what you guys have created because of your personal experience and where you really see a need and how we really need to be supported. So I think before we talk about some other things, I am just really looking forward to hearing about Hero Generation.
Amazing. Yeah. I guess just from this conversation, you can kind of hear like where the origin story started and how both Shruti and I going through the caregiving journey and the overwhelming task or overwhelming new role, how, for me, it started with how can I make this journey easier for people, like me, who I'm done with it, but we all know if you haven't gone through caregiving yet, you will eventually. And those of you that are still in it, how can we make this easier? And so when I was put in touch with Shruti, because I had been kind of ruminating on this for a while, and a mutual friend put us in touch, really for both of us, I think the number one thing was how do we make offloading the workload to friends and family who want to help, who want to be part of it, who want to share in the journey? How do we make that as easy as possible for them? And so HeroGeneration is a platform to really ease the stress and workload for caregivers. And we have 3 pillars, but the first main pillar is really task management and collaboration with your friends and family. So within HeroGeneration, you simple as making a to-do list. You just create tasks. You can assign them to people on your team, whether that's friends, family, neighbors, aunts, uncles, whomever it may be that you've invited. You can assign those tasks. And then we have a loved one's profile where all the necessary information is stored. So their health insurance information, their medical condition, their medications, their doctors, location, phone number, contact information, any allergies, etc., and legal documents. It's all stored there. So that next question that you get, like my brother, can you take mom to her pulmonologist? Who's her
Mhm.
pulmonologist? It's all there. It's all right there. He doesn't even have to ask that question. You don't have to go and share a Google Maps. It's all right there in one place. for your team to be able to execute on those to-dos, the tasks, whatever it may be that you create. And of course, it sends your team members the task once you've assigned it to them. So you don't even have to call them and tell them. You can also leave tasks unassigned. So if they go in and they want to pick stuff up, take things off your list, they can do that too. It really is just making it so easy for people to help, for the team to help.
Yeah.
So that's the first main pillar. The second main pillar, kind of what we talked about, the resources. Again, my situation, what's palliative care versus hospice care? What do I do? We have both expert-led resources, so videos that experts in healthcare and legal and mental health, they've all done and created. Those are on our site. In addition, we have a digital assistant called Ask Andrea, and she's actually named after my mom. And so if you go, it's my mom's face. But she's a digital AI caregiving assistant. And this is where you can really ask questions specific to your situation. So, for me, I'm in Los Angeles. I could ask my father was diagnosed with cancer. What are some resources in Los Angeles? Or, he's at this stage. What does it look like? Just really to get specific tailored information on your own time, in your own space, for the information that you really need to support your caregiving journey. It's all right there. And then finally, the community piece. So there's numerous caregiving Zooms, events, etc., all there. You can find something that's feels right to you. So again, you can see that you're not alone in that journey. So really, that's what HeroGeneration is. We wanted to make a digital platform that people could access and really have it be their HQ for caring for their loved one and have everything just all in one place for them.
Love that. It's so good, so needed. And you call the people care heroes, correct? Yeah. It's so true. There's so much happening in the future of caregiving. This is a part of this, right? Of how do we care in a better way and take off some of that burden and that stress. What else do you see in the future of caregiving? If we could reimagine that, what does it look like for you?
I'd say, yeah, I'd say that I think with more conversations and really studying caregiving as its own subject and entity will really help us build the resources that we need, both on a personal level and on a federal level. I think there needs to be a lot more knowledge and insight and studies done on caregivers and seeing just how, putting in some money now, some more money now to make caregivers feel empowered and educated is really going to lead to less money spent on healthcare, readmissions, depression rates. So it's in everybody's interest to study caregivers from early on because no one really knows it. I didn't think once about it before it happened to me. And so I think we really need more insight, more education when, when people are turning 20 instead of 40, because, and as we know, the age of caregivers is decreasing. So more and more people in their 30s are becoming caregivers. And I think we need to let people know about what's to come.
What we're also excited about at HeroGeneration too, and kind of building is, AI can be very scary, but AI can also be very, very helpful in being a predictor or a recommendation of what your situation will be, because disease progression, it progresses as it's going to progress, and it's pretty well known, eventually how different conditions will progress. And so what I think we're excited about is being able to eventually, we're not there yet with HeroGeneration, and there's a lot being done out there, being able to recommend in advance of what's going to happen for your situation as a caregiver, so that you can, come in, you enter this space saying, my loved one has just been diagnosed with this, what does that journey look like? And it can already foresee kind of like, maybe a timeline or just some things that for you to do as the caregiver to be prepared before you even know that you need to do that. And I think, looking down the line, that's what where we're trying to get to, so that nobody, like I said, going back to my situation, like nobody's unprepared. Nobody is thrown into the situation and you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen next. It's not going to be a perfect predictor probably, but there are certain things that we can absolutely recommend, as time goes on with your journey. We can do that even now, like, of course, like getting certain documents in place, getting, all of that. And that's what we're trying to do with HeroGeneration now, but being even more exact and more precise so that the unpredictability of caregiving and unknown is, that piece is taken off. The emotional stress will probably never be relieved because that's your loved one, right? But the other ancillary tasks and things to do and what's going to be happening can potentially be relieved, and you can focus on really the honor and love that you have for your loved one, and really diving deeper into that rather than the other tasks.
I agree. I agree. Be able to dive into the relationship. Yeah. And all of that quote unquote experts, right? And people will say plan ahead. But when you don't know what that pathway is, it's hard to do that. So if we have a glimpse into that support,
Absolutely.
helpful. Yeah. For people listening that are in it, right? They're exhausted, overwhelmed. Sometimes they feel unseen. What do you want them to hear from you today?
Gosh. So I think obviously, as I had mentioned earlier, find someone to speak to, but also I would want them to not feel so guilty. I think that guilt feeling will really just exacerbate the situation that you're in. And so I'd want them to try to reframe that guilt. I'd want them to, ask for help, get the support that they need. I mean, caregiving shouldn't be like a solo journey. I'd hope that they'd be able to bring in the help that they need, to not feel so guilty that they're not doing enough. So,
Absolutely. I mean, I say this to caregivers all the time. And when I get into conversations with them, I just look at them and I say, you're doing a good job. You are doing a great job. Like, you being there is enough, and you're doing a good job, because it's not like you go to college for this. It's not like you train for this. It is emotional, it is stressful, it is complex, but no matter what you're doing a good job. And that's all I think, people need to hear. And from there, no matter what you do, you're doing what you can do. And I think, like Shruti said, removing that guilt, I felt that guilt 100%, and looking back, like, it was so hard and stressful. I still feel guilt about, should I have done this? And then I have to check myself, Nicole, you did everything you could. And just being there and being supportive, is great. And the more help you can bring in to be that team, you're better, together, and all of that stuff. It really does make sense. But no matter what, as a caregiver, you're doing a good job.
We need to hear that over and over, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so much. This has been so helpful, and hearing your perspectives, right? Having been in it and then shifting to have the purpose, right? To really support people because I think that's so valuable for all of us. Where can we go to learn more, connect with you guys, connect with the support?
Yes, amazing. So you can go to the site herogen.co. So HeroGen.co. That's our website. You can sign up right there. Right now we're web-based, so it's all online. An app is in the near future, but right now we're relatively new, so we're making sure we're getting it right. We want people to know, please try out the platform. It's free to sign up, no credit card required. So please play around with it. If you think of, there's a feature or something that would really be supportive, we want to hear from you. It's just hello@herogen.co. And so please play around with it. Let us know, give us your feedback. And we really want to make this as useful for caregivers as possible. And of course, we're on, all the socials at HeroGeneration on Instagram. We're hero__generation. But if you just type in HeroGeneration, you'll in the search, you'll find us. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you. We want as many people testing it out as possible. Please, sign up, let us know what's good, what's not good, because that's really what's going to make it best for all caregivers.
And I'll put a little plug in for our community caregiver virtual events. We talked a lot today about connection and not feeling so isolated and lonely. And I just want to say that, Nicole and I, we're both here for you guys as well. Please connect with us, even if you just need advice or have a question or want to speak to other caregivers. It's not, we love our platform. It's amazing, but we also want people to know that we're also there for them. I don't want anyone feeling lonely in this journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have regular caregiver connect meetings. So join us. Let's connect.
Yeah. So good. Thank you, ladies. And I'm really excited about this and to keep sharing more about Hero Generation. And I'll put all the links in our episode. People can go and click and learn more and connect with you guys. Thank you. This was so great.
Nicole, you are, your voice, your presence, your everything. Like, I wish you were around when I was going through this, because it's just such a warm and welcoming place and helpful place. And so you and this community, coming into this community, it's just such a lifeline. And the work that you're doing and so many others are doing is just incredible. And I love that we're all just in this space together, just trying to make it better. So if you know caregivers or other people who aren't connected into the different communities, just let them know that there are so many people out here trying to make that journey a little bit easier. And Nicole, you obviously are such a great leader in this space. So thank you.
Thank you. That means a lot. I know, all of us together. It's so great. We all find each other. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe and give us 5 stars. In all honesty, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to our episode.